Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. How are we getting on? Welcome to a brand new camp build. So, this week on the Atomic Shop, there are a whole bunch of new Free States fortifications that I thought we'd use to reinforce this little pre-existing cabin in the Savage Divide. Okay, so yeah, I came across this place while looking for somewhere cool to put these new bits and pieces to use, and there's some fairly decent Free States themed bits and pieces here, as well as a water tower from the sort of railroad system. And yeah, I stumbled across this cabin that looks really quite good for building up. So, this is where we are. As you can see, we're not far from the White Spring there. There's a couple of major locations just around the corner here that are worth having a gander at, not far from Foundation. And yeah, basically heading up the hill a little bit from the railway track there is the easiest way to find this spot. One of the better cabins as far as sort of turning it into a player home goes, because it's not overly cluttered on the inside, so you can get a bit of furniture and stuff in there. So, a lot of stuff outside here as well, but we're going to need somewhere to put our crafting benches, so that's what we're going to start off with, a nice little crafting shack. As, yeah, there is room in this cabin, but not that much room. So, sort of eyeballing this a little bit, we'll get some foundations in. As you can see here, the ground is very, very, very much not flat. So working with that is going to be quite the theme. So we're going to dip down this front section of the building here, a crafting shed. Yeah, in hindsight, maybe pushing the whole thing back to the left a little bit further so we could use the flat bit at the top might have been the way, but you know, hindsight's 2020 and all that. So we're going to dip down this front section so the stairs aren't quite so high, and also so the front edge of the foundation isn't quite so exposed either, because I don't like the way that looks. There we go. Get rid of that. And the stairs not really necessary there. Useful trick, but not massively necessary here. But it does make sure that transition's smooth and looks a bit neater. So there we go. So, in the opposite of going neat, we're going to grab the abandoned mine set here and build the shed with that, as it basically matches up with the wood that's used for the cabin over there. It's got the same kind of weathered vibe to it, so it works quite nicely. And in contrast, I'm going to use this copper roof set. It is actually part of the Halloween set from last year. But it's quite a good set. It goes fairly well here, and the vines and stuff hanging off the roof look pretty good. Interestingly enough, it's actually snapping a little lower than it's meant to here, which works quite nicely, actually, for the result. We'll have a look back at that in the tour and talk about it a bit more then. But it means the roof just sits a little bit lower and doesn't have any big gaps in it, so I'm okay with that. There we go. There's a easy little shed. Kind of a pain to decorate, but we'll come back to that in just a bit. So, the major thing here is fortifying this place. So, we're going to start off getting this chain link fence just next to the canoe there, which is a bit awkward. I had originally had other ideas, but needed to get away from the canoe, so there we go. And here is our first piece of the Free State stuff. So this is the perimeter wall frame. There is a set of these in already that are plain sort of steel, and those work quite well. But this one obviously has got a bit of that Free States colouring and stuff to it. I like the stairs on this one. Not 100% sold on the legs in particular. I think they look a little bit odd. They're okay. There's just something about them that's just a tiny little bit strange to my eye. Maybe I'm just so used to seeing scrappy stuff, but still, it works quite well. So we'll dip that down and make sure the height's right, because that's going to be our entranceway. And we'll need to extend this out. But I'm encountering a few difficulties in extending this out, because I don't want the stairs on the entranceway. I want to swap it out for one of the ones that doesn't have stairs, that unfortunately won't just place on its own unless it's snapped to the stairs. So there's a whole thing that we're going to come back to in a moment, but this is why I couldn't extend it out. This little guy here is sitting there, not moving, right in the way of where I want to build, and is preventing me from placing the frames down. So unfortunately, as he's not willing to move, he's going to have to meet his maker. But we'll let the game figure out that he's no longer there and sort of do this side wall. And it's also not such a bad thing, because it allows us to kind of make the walls meet in the middle, so that makes making the lines meet up a bit easier in some ways. One thing that's not easy, though, is working with this slope, because we've got rocks here as well as the slopey ground. It's kind of a nightmare to place anything. Chain link and the encampment fences are both really good for working on slopes. You have to play around with it a bit. In this case, it's really a case of place it wherever it will go, and then try and move it as close to where you want it to be as it will allow it to go. Because it's definitely a wing it approach here, which kind of always is with junk fences, but on this slope with the rocks, it's a struggle, to say the least. But we did manage. I've gone for the junk fence here because it's kind of a tiny little bit flatter there. So I can actually get away with using that. And I like to mix things up. So using the encampment fences or the chain link rather, when I don't need to, will just create excessive repetition, and I want variety, not repetition, if I can get it. But got a few more pieces in there. Seems to be coming on nicely. So on that note, we'll bounce back over to the entrance again. I've got that lined up. And start extending that front edge out to meet in this corner. So, there's our dearly departed friend. And we can now place things over the corpse, fortunately. So, let's come back to this one. So we're going to grab these perimeter wall frames again, and I'm basically going to set it up so we've got the one without the stairs there on its own, which, as I said, doesn't place. Now, I went through this fairly quickly, so we'll do it again in slow motion so you can really see how to make that stand on its own. So we've got the one with the stairs in, that's where we actually want to end up. We're going to snap two of the ones without stairs onto the side. And now we take the one in the middle off, specifically that one. Now we can take the stairs out, leaving this one over here on its own. And we kind of reverse engineer it back to this end. So two more on the sides, take the middle one out, and take off the one we don't need. And there we go. We now have a standalone version with no stairs. Works for the regular set as well. They're a bit annoying to place without stairs, because obviously it doesn't like to do that. They're snapping only. But that is how we do it. I'll be doing it again around the other side in a bit. But here we have our new Free States guard post. So there's two of these, there's a tall one and a short one. Really like this tall one in particular. It's got a very cool style to it, and it'll actually work for a few different styles of builds, I think, not just Free State stuff, which is quite cool. Whilst my thought was to place it right next to the entrance, I'm going to move it over a bit so we've got a better view down the path there. And it also kind of works with the lie of the land a little better, and it just looks a bit better from that front approach as well, so goes fairly well. Partly, I think, because I've got the fence on the left there, having a fence next to the gate on the other side just looks a bit neater. So, new wall railing piece that comes with the set as well, snaps onto the top of that frame quite nicely. Sadly, we don't have half-size versions of that, so if you want to do the sides of that frame, you've still got to use the wooden pieces, which is a bit annoying. But those full-size ones are quite cool, nonetheless. We'll get that encampment fence in. I'm going to have to double up here because this little bit of ground is so steep, it's the only option. But, we can live with that as long as it doesn't happen too often. And we'll get this junk fence in. I'm going to reverse it so it sits up against the stairs of the guard post there, just to come along this edge. Not a lot of room by the edge of the build area there. Flopsy here is getting in the way again. Get out of the way, you'll meet Cottontail. There we go, gotcha. So that's in there, and that leaves us with one gap that's just a little big for any of the half-size pieces, but too small for any of the full-size pieces. Fortunately, this red brick stucco gate fits perfectly, so that's going to do the job. I did have a cunning plan here to try and make this a bit more interesting, but like all cunning plans, it went about as well as you'd expect. So the idea was grab the flamethrower trap, destroy the gate, and hopefully be able to clip the chain link into the brickwork at the edge to kind of close it off a bit more. Unfortunately, it didn't work that way. I had an idea that might work, hindsight 2020, all that stuff, but also thinking about it, I think the ground might be a little slopey for the idea that I've got. I just place a piece off to the left and then snap it in. You might end up with a bit of weird floating going on there, so maybe not. Either way, it sits in front of it quite nicely and seals that up a bit more. We can jump over the top and just lock it to make sure no creatures or people or anything unlock it. So, we're going to do this little back entrance here, and I'll sort of point out roughly where this last bit of junk fence is going to go, but we're repeating the same process on a slightly easier bit of ground to work with around the back here. It's still going to take a while, but I'm sure you guys have got the general idea now, so rather than sitting here for another 15 minutes and repeating the process, we'll just have a look at this back gate before we move on to the tour. So, again, just checking the height here, because I don't want to be too much higher than that. If it's too high, again, it just ends up looking a bit weird. And you can also have issues with these ones on the sides not connecting to the ground, which scuppers your whole plan. But as you can see, we're doing the same thing we did on the front gate, just to get that standalone piece. Nice. And we'll get a guard post in. You see the back of the cabin to the left there? I'm basically going to extend this junk fence in a big loop around towards that tree at the back there, and then back towards the far corner of the cabin there. just so I've got a bit of extra space inside the compound when we're done with it. But as I say, I'll do that off camera. Looking at this guard post again, though. This time, as I say, I'm going to put it up against the entrance. And the major reason is this big sort of piece of rock that we're standing on kind of creates a natural path that curves around the side of it. It's not really a path, but it kind of implies one. And I want the guard post to face towards that. I have to make sure it's sunk down with the slope here quite a long way, so it doesn't look like it's floating. There we go. Yeah, this kind of natural pathway here to the left is kind of covered then. Looks good. So, with that all in place, we will extend the junk fence off camera and head off and decorate, and I will see you guys in the finished tour in just a moment. And there we go. So yeah, rather happy with how this came out. I haven't shown you anything of what I've done on the inside here because it's basic decoration stuff, so we'll have a look at the inside of that cabin in a moment, and it's come out quite nicely. The Free State stuff looks pretty cool. It blends into the environment okay. The guard post looks a bit better than the perimeter fence, I think, there, the railing piece that we've used for an entrance. I mean, they work, but they do look a tiny bit out of place to my eye. Maybe it's just because I haven't got used to them, but maybe a bit too clean and colourful in the look, and a bit too sort of squarish, really. I don't know, it's kind of hard to express what I'm thinking, but they're not quite there. But the guard posts look really cool, and the rest of the junk fences come together quite nicely with some extra decoration around the outside there. Head on inside. Very cool that those new railings snap onto foundations though, which is quite handy as you know, adding a bit of variety in tying stuff together. I had to put the foundation in there for the Collectron as flat ground in this particular location is at quite the premium. There we go. Pan around this side. Added a few extra bits of texture onto the junk fences there as well. Stash box on the guard post just to, you know, store ammo effectively is the vibe. You've got a nice view down the path from here. This fence is actually just about as high as you can possibly shoot over on the guard post there. If it was any higher, it would be a problem, but it looks like it's kind of almost too high, really, but when you actually pull a gun out, it's not so bad. But it's higher than most, so there's a bit of a unique thing to it. So, here is the little hut that was in place. So, I had a few little bits on the outside, just kind of shore it up, reinforce it a little bit, and add a little bit of texture and interest to it. I'll head on inside. Curtains over the entrance here. Unfortunately, kind of make it difficult to get in. You have to take a bit of a run at it, but it works. The chain link gate would have worked quite well there, I think. The half-size one, but would have given a bit of a different vibe. I don't think it'd end up cozy either way, but it's more of a door than just a screen, I suppose, that way. But yeah, the curtain works as well. Quite like that one. Quite like the way the inside of here has come out. There was not too much stuff in here initially, and placing some stuff down was a little bit awkward. Did have to blueprint a few things outside and then place blueprinted versions so that they'd actually sit, but on the whole, it's come out okay. Big hole in the roof is not ideal. I'd like to be able to shore that up, but unfortunately, options are not available for that. Yeah, a little bit of decoration, a little splash of colour here and there has made this a bit more homey. It's quite pleased with how that's come out. Yeah, I did a few extra bits and pieces of scrap around by my collector on there, just to have a few things to salvage to repair it if need be. I do like having those typewriters, and we've got toasters and stuff like that now, and bit by bit we're getting more sort of tabletop decorations that are coming in, especially through the seasons. This current season's got a bunch in, and the next season, apparently, we've had a whole bunch of data mined on that as well. Got a few crops out front. Don't really need these for my character, but they do add a little bit more interest, and they fill up an otherwise dead space. There's a rad stag that decided to wander in there. I dressed up the shack a little bit with some splashes of colour and stuff to make it more interesting. I'll have a look inside. You see that bramble decided not to bulldoze, which is a bit unfortunate. Not the end of the world, but it looks a bit odd. Yeah, quite happy with how this crafting room's come out. I had to play around with the benches quite a lot to make sure everything actually was usable in here. But we fit everything in okay. To get everything in, by the way, I had to take the roofs off, put all the furniture in, play around with it, make it fit, and then flamethrower the whole lot of it, then so that I could then snap the roof back on. You can kind of see it sits a little bit low at the top half, because it's snapped onto the roof in the corner that we're looking at here. And yeah, with those low roofs, it does mean placing things under them can be problematic, and if you take them off, so you can place the furniture, then the furniture often blocks the roof coming back, so flamethrower use was liberally required. So you've shored up the backside of the cabin there a little bit as well. So here's a bit more of a detailed look at our back gate. See, got the outhouse here that was already in place, so I incorporated that into the wall. I think the smell is probably a little bit iffy, judging by its occupant. And I've used the current season's new turrets as well, the cryo turrets, because the blue blends in quite nicely with the blue bits on the free state stuff, so that's quite cool. And also, they are pretty devastatingly effective, those cryo turrets. So I can recommend. So you've got a decent view up the hillside there. The vantage is just up the cliff edge behind the trees there, and there's a pond up top with a super mutant behemoth hanging out in it. So defences on this back edge were a prudent consideration, I think, just in case any of those folks decide to wander down the hill. But I haven't had that happen yet, but we'll see what happens next week when I'm streaming. Here's the extension of that wall that I did off camera. You see, it's the same principle. I did a few extra bits to dress it up, put some Vault Boys in there just to kind of point towards the back entrance, because you tend to spawn in on this back side, so make it a bit easier to see where you're going. I'll head back on inside. Got my Radstag field dressing station there, because my character's become a carnivore since he's picked that up. And there's already that Radstag in the tree as well, which is, yeah, it's pretty handy to have. It means you get some Radstag meat, but it also doesn't produce it as fast as the field dressing station does, so there is that. And on the left here, we have the new, currently on the Atomic Shop, water tower, which is a railroad-style one. I thought it was going to look out of place in this build. It actually works just fine, as it turns out. Quite like the look. I'm going to head up and have a look at this little back fence here again. I've set it up so you can kind of walk onto the roof as long as you're moving quick enough, which is quite cool. It means you've got somewhere else to stand and fire from if you need to defend the place. Looks pretty decent. I like the way those back edges kind of come together and blended into the environment and works around the trees and stuff. Again, we've got all these shrubs and stuff at the back here and these bushes that wouldn't bulldoze, which is what it is, I guess. Slightly annoying, but still, having bushes inside the camp does make it look like it's all been here for a while, so it's not so bad. I just kind of wish it wasn't sprouting through my buildings, that's all. What can you do? Yeah, all in all, I really like how scrappy this place has come out and how, I think for the most part it looks like somewhere you could just stumble across, and you can tell it's player built with a few of the bits and pieces, but it doesn't have too strong a vibe in that way. For the most part it does look like it could be a location you could stumble across. Just slightly more colourful, really. So I'm fairly pleased with that. Yeah, decent place to kind of hang out. A little bit of shelter in here. You get a breeze blowing through these walls, but I do like the vibe on the inside of this cabin. And there aren't a lot of places that you can really get the furniture and have it look the way I would like and easy to move around. Some of them end up just being too messy, but I do like how this one came out. So there we go. I hope you folks did enjoy this one. If you did, please do consider dropping subs and likes, clicking that notification bell. I do very, very much appreciate it. It really helps out. Down below the video as well in the description, we've got social media links, merch store, channel memberships, all that good stuff on the buttons in the description down there. Really help out the channel as well if you're interested in supporting that way. Very, very much appreciate it. Do check out the new Starfield news as well. Put a video up on that earlier in the week, which I know doesn't get shown around as far as it might do. So if you're interested in Starfield, new video on that. I'll try to link that somewhere as well. And last but not least, if you get the chance, join us for live streams as well. We'll be going live as usual about 8 o'clock UK time in the evening, playing Fallout and Redfall, as well as some other really cool stuff this summer. So I do hope you've joined us for that. But for now, thank you very much for watching. I look forward to speaking to you all very, very soon.